British auto manufacturer Jaguar recently released a bizarre ad that features no cars. Take a look. Here to break this down for us is Isaac Simpson. He's the founder of Will Agency. So Isaac, please help us, because I have no idea what Jaguar is trying to sell us in that ad, and who thought this was a good idea?
Yeah, well, it was made by the UK brand team. And, the Jaguar is a failing brand. It's doing very poorly. It sold for $2 billion in 2008. And to put that in perspective, Tesla is worth something like $600 billion. And, even a mid-sized car brand or a small car brand is about $50 billion. So they're really struggling, and they've been really struggling for a very long time. And so they've decided to switch everything over to EV, and they're going to be 100% electric vehicles. And then not only that, they're going to charge twice what they're already charging for their cars. So clearly they ask their marketing team to create a radical new approach to their branding, and they're getting rid of their iconic logo with their beautiful Jaguar logo, and this is what they came up with, the Copy Nothing campaign.
Now, Isaac, what's interesting about this is that there was an immediate response, right, online that I think was pronounced, and maybe we can say negative. Maybe I'm in a bubble, right? Maybe my feed is all the best
Your
people.
feedback loop.
But it does seem like it was pronounced and negative. What do you think, though, their goal was with this ad? I mean, you could make the argument, for instance, I think it's outdated, but you could make the argument like, look, we just showed their ad, right? And so the ad is spreading and it's controversial. But what do you think their strategy was?
Well, I don't think this was any publicity is good publicity situation. I think that they're in a bubble. And I think that the people that create the ads for this particular brand are just living in a bubble, as we've seen so many times, time and time again, with Bud Light and so many other brands. And they're living in a bubble. If you look at the brand director himself, who actually was in charge of this campaign, he's the kind of guy who goes on stage and he's wearing like a sheer see-through shirt. So, you could imagine the type of guy this is. And inside agencies where I've worked that make videos like this is called a brand video. It's not even a TV ad. They've just chased away all the people who would say, don't do this. They've chased away all the voices that would stop them from releasing such an ad. And they get in sort of a, bubble feedback loop where they're all pumping each other up and being like, oh, yeah, this is radical. This is amazing. And then they come out with this and then they release it to the general public and they're shocked because they're like, wait, we thought this was radical and amazing and cool. But the fact is they're just completely disconnected with the people that they're selling the cars to.
Okay, so Jaguar has come out and said the criticism of this is vile hatred and intolerance. So take us behind the curtain, right? At an ad agency, when something like this does happen, what will they be doing now? What are the next steps at that point?
You mean to respond to the negative criticism?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're probably telling themselves internally, well, we're the victim of hatred, right? And they're probably saying, this is exactly what happens when you try to be radical and new and inclusive, And so they're probably patting themselves on the back, and they probably are telling themselves, well, at least we made a splash. At least we made a lot of earned media, as it's called, which is when people talk about you. So they're probably, kind of coping by telling themselves this is exactly what they wanted, right? That's what I would imagine is happening now. The real measure, though, will be when they come out with their new line of EVs, which are, again, really expensive. They're making a radical bet on very, very expensive EVs. When none of them sell, then it'll be time to fire the marketing people. I mean, as what happened with Bud Light. The reason why Bud Light was such a disaster for AB InBev is because the revenue was undeniable. The drop in revenue, they were the number one brand in America, and then they dropped to not the number one brand in America and far down on the list. And so when the revenue starts to dry up, that's when they'll get fired or afraid.
So Isaac, what I think what it's striking a lot of people about this is everyone can remember when of a certain age when Jaguar was kind of cool, right? And it's like even in the cultural even if you're younger, even if you're 18, if you know anything about the past, right? There's a James Bond kind of, cool, sexy, high-end thing going on. And what's interesting to me is that they seem to think that this will appeal, right, to that demographic. Of course, right after this election, it seems like things are changing culturally very rapidly. And so a lot of people said this ad now seems old and outdated, but it strikes me as people are talking about it because it represents what's happened to a lot of iconic brands, right? You went from James Bond, cool, sexy, rich guy, right, who does stuff, to whatever the hell this is, and you've ruined the brand in the process. And it says something about a kind of decline. And it doesn't strike me as it doesn't have to go that way, right? So if it's a model for what's happened to a lot of brands, is there any hope? I mean, do you think that there'll be a learning curve here? Or is it the case that there's a lot of 55-year-old wealthy males who are going to end up buying these EVs because of this ad? I mean, I don't talk about it as a symbol of what's going on. Help us out here.
Well, strategically, they're going to try to fill in where Tesla, because people are mad at Elon, they're going to try to fill in for, we can't drive a Tesla because we're liberals, we're well-to-do, we can't drive a Tesla, so what can we drive? Maybe we can drive a Jaguar EV, right? So they're going to try to hit that market. So in that sense, them doing this, at least strategically, has some, you could make some argument for it. That being said, again, you're totally right in what you're saying. The Jaguar is a car that sells to well-to-do men. My grandfather, a doctor, drove a Jaguar his whole life, and very proud of it. And they've lost that audience entirely, right? So in their minds, they're saying, well, we've lost our old audience. We need to go to a new audience, which is, EV fans. So we're going to drastically shift. Now, is that going to work? In my opinion, obviously not, because they're not going to be able to sell these really, really high-end EVs to this new audience that they're trying to make materialize out of the sky. I just don't think, I don't think it's going to work. But strategically, we'll just have to find out when the actual cars come out and if anybody buys them. I don't think they're going to, though.
They're turning the cars gay. They're queering the cars.
I don't see this EV for the Jaguar coming out to be the new midlife crisis car. Isaac Simpson, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you guys.
Matthew, when I was on the flight home with Glenn Beck from North Carolina, he loves talking about old cars, classic cars, collectors. And he was just obsessing over this one Jaguar that he was looking at and showing us photos. And he's like, why are they taking the engine out of a Jaguar, right? I have to imagine that he speaks for a lot of people.
Yes. I think what's happening also is you're seeing it almost be a high-end thing, right, to go back to retro, to have that old gas engine in there as well. So, I mean, just it strikes me, everything about this is sort of moving in the wrong direction, even just in terms of branding, for the brand. But also, I think I took away a hopeful, conclusion to all of this, which is that I think everyone saw this and was like, nah, this is just dumb. This doesn't make any sense. Why are you putting this weird stuff in there? And when you just think about it logically, what do sexualities have to do with a car? What is weird? I mean, the whole thing is, I think, outdated. And what you're seeing is a moment when people go, ew, that doesn't make any sense.
It's a pushback. We're making America great again. You and your British cars, we're going to come for you too.